The ship groaned as it slowed down near the massive alien station. Danny Carter sat in his pilot's seat and watched the structure grow larger through his window. Station 4 was a beautiful thing, all smooth curves and glowing lights, spinning slowly against the black of space. It looked like something from a dream, but Danny knew better than to trust beautiful things out here in the deep black. He was just a cargo hauler, nothing special. His ship was old and tired, held together by patches and prayers. He carried goods from one end of the galaxy to the other, and he tried to stay out of trouble. That was the plan, anyway. Plans had a funny way of falling apart when you were human in alien space. The docking clamps grabbed his ship with a heavy thunk. Danny stood up and stretched his back. He was 42 years old, and he felt every year of it. His brown hair was going at the sides, and his face carried lines from too many long nights and not enough sleep. He had served in the military once back when Earth was still trying to prove itself to the galaxy. Now he just wanted to make enough money to keep flying. He grabbed his jacket and walked to the airlock. The door hissed open, and the smell of the alien station hit him immediately. It was clean, almost too clean, with a faint sweet smell that reminded him of flowers he could not name. They liked everything perfect and orderly. They had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. They never let anyone forget it. Danny stepped onto the station and felt the eyes on him right away. They were tall and thin, with blue skin and large, dark eyes. They moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy. As Danny walked through the corridor, they stepped aside to let him pass. Not out of respect, out of the same feeling you might have when avoiding something unpleasant on the street. He was used to it. Humans had only been part of galactic society for about 80 years. That was nothing compared to species that counted their history in tens of thousands of years. To the elder races, humans were children, worse than children. They were unpredictable, emotional, and dangerous. They called humans outsiders because they did not fit into the careful order of things. Danny made his way to the supply district. The marketplace was busy with aliens of many species, but they were everywhere, watching and managing. Their station, their rules. He found the vendor he was looking for and arranged to buy fuel and food for the next leg of his journey. The merchant treated him with cold politeness, taking his credits without ever quite looking at him. That was fine. Danny did not need friends here. He just needed supplies. He finished his business and started walking back to his ship. The sooner he left this place, the better. He had a delivery to make on the frontier worlds, and the pay was good. Maybe after this job, he could afford to fix the heating system on his ship. The nights got cold out in the deep black. The station corridors were getting quieter as he moved away from the market. The lights here were dimmer, and the walls showed signs of age. Even perfect stations had their forgotten corners. Danny walked faster, keeping his eyes forward. Then he heard it, a small sound, almost nothing, a whimper. He stopped. His instincts told him to keep walking. Getting involved in things on alien stations was a good way to end up in trouble, or dead. He had survived this long by minding his own business. But the sound came again. It was coming from a narrow alley between two storage buildings. Danny stood there for a long moment. Then he cursed quietly and turned toward the alley. The light was dim, but he could see a small figure huddled against the wall. It was a child. A child, maybe the same as a 12-year-old human. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes were dirty and torn. She looked up at him with eyes that were too big in her small face. For a moment, neither of them moved. The girl looked terrified, pressing herself against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. Danny realized what he must look like to her. A big, strange human looming in the shadows. A monster from the stories her people probably told about the outsiders. He held up his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Easy," he said softly. "Easy there, I'm not going to hurt you." The girl stared at him. He could see her trembling. Danny lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller, less threatening. He had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best thing you could do was make yourself less scary. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The girl shook her head slowly, but she was clearly not okay. He could see the hunger in her face, the exhaustion in the way she held herself. She had been out here for a while. Danny reached into his jacket and pulled out a ration bar. It was nothing fancy, just basic nutrition, the kind of thing he kept for long flights when real food was not an option. He held it out to her. The girl looked at the bar, then at him, then at the bar again. He could see the struggle in her eyes, fear fighting against hunger. Hunger won. She reached out slowly and took the bar from his hand. She tore it open and ate it so fast he was worried she might choke. Danny watched her eat and felt something twist in his chest. He had seen hungry people before. He had been hungry himself, back in the bad years after the war. But there was something about seeing a child like this, alone and forgotten in the shadows, that cut through all his careful walls. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl finished the bar and looked at him. For a long moment, he thought she would not answer. "Vila," she said. Her voice was small and rough from not using it. "Vila," Danny repeated. "That's a nice name. I'm Danny." She studied him with those large, dark eyes. He could almost see her trying to figure him out, trying to decide if he was safe. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You are human." Danny smiled a little at that. "Yeah, I am. We do that sometimes, help people, I mean." Vila looked at him like he had said something that made no sense at all. And maybe he had. Maybe that was exactly the problem with humans. They did things that made no sense to anyone else in the galaxy. They helped strangers in dark alleys. They gave away their food to hungry children. They got involved when they should have kept walking. Danny looked at the small alien girl and knew, somewhere deep in his gut, that his life was about to get a lot more complicated. Danny gave Vila another ration bar and sat down on an old crate across from her. The alley was quiet, and the dim light made everything feel hidden from the rest of the station. The girl ate the second bar more slowly this time, watching him with careful eyes. "How long have you been out here?" Danny asked. Vila swallowed and looked down at her hands. 5 days, maybe 6, I lost count." 5 days. A child, alone on a station full of strangers, hiding in the shadows. Danny felt the twist in his chest again. "Where are your parents?" The girl's face changed. Something dark passed over it, a grief too big for someone so small. "They died. There was an accident on the mining ship where they worked. A machine broke. Many people died." Danny closed his eyes for a moment. Mining accidents happened everywhere, on human ships and alien ships alike. Space was dangerous, and the machines that kept people alive were always trying to kill them. He had lost friends that way, back in his military days. "I'm sorry," he said. It was not enough, but it was all he had. Vila nodded, accepting his words without looking up. "After they died, the officials came. They said I had no family left, no one to take care of me. They said I would go to the state." Danny did not know much about culture, but he had heard of They were institutions where orphan children were raised by the state. The belief that children should be trained to be useful members of society, not coddled with affection. They were efficient and cold. Children went in and workers came out. Nothing more. "And you ran," Danny said. Vila nodded. "I could not go there, I could not." Her voice broke a little and she wiped her eyes quickly as if ashamed of showing emotion. "The officials have been looking for me. If they find me, they will take me tomorrow. There is a custody hearing. They will give me to and I will never be free again." Danny leaned back against the wall. This was exactly the kind of trouble he had spent years avoiding. An alien child, alien laws, alien politics. He was just a cargo hauler. He had no power here, no standing. He was not even supposed to be on this station for more than a few hours. But he could not stop looking at her face, at the fear and the hope fighting in her eyes. "Is there anyone else?" he asked. "Any relative, any friend of your family?" Vila shook her head. No one. My parents had no brothers or sisters. Their parents are dead. There is no one. Danny ran a hand through his hair. What about someone who knew your parents, someone who might take you in? Vila laughed, but it was not a happy sound. You do not understand. Do not adopt children who are not their blood. It is not our way. Attachment is weakness. The is meant to make children strong by removing all attachment. No one will claim me. No one wants a stranger's child. Danny sat in silence. He understood now why she had been hiding. She was not just running from an institution. She was running from a whole culture that had no place for her, a culture that saw love as a weakness and efficiency as the highest good. It was a cold way to live, a cold way to die. Vila looked at him suddenly, and her eyes were bright with something new, something desperate. There is one way, she said, one chance. Danny felt a warning in his gut. What way? Vila moved closer, her small hands gripping the edge of her torn sleeve. There is an old law, a galactic law from before my people joined the Great Federation. It says that any adult of any species can claim custody of a child if they can prove a bond, an emotional bond. The law was made for species that adopt children from other worlds. It is almost never used, but it is still real. It is still law. Danny stared at her. He could see where this was going, and everything inside him was screaming to stop it. To stand up, walk away, and forget he ever came into this alley. But he did not move. The hearing is tomorrow, Vila said. Her voice was shaking now, trembling with hope and fear. If someone stands before the council and claims me, if someone says they will be my family, then they cannot take me. The council would have to consider the claim. Danny's mouth felt dry. You want me to claim you? Vila nodded. Tears were forming in her large dark eyes, but she blinked them back. Please, I know it is crazy. I know you do not know me. I know you have no reason to help me. But you are the only one who has been kind to me since my parents died. You gave me food. You sat with me. You asked my name. She reached out and grabbed his hand with both of hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, not like human skin at all, but her grip was strong. Please pretend you're my father, she said. Just for the hearing, just long enough to save me, please. Danny looked at their hands together. Human and two species that barely understood each other. The galaxy was full of beings who thought humans were nothing more than clever animals, young and foolish and not worth the trouble. And here was this child, asking him to stand before the rulers of one of the oldest species in the galaxy and claim her as his own. It was insane. The council would laugh at him. They would throw him off the station. They might even arrest him for interfering in their affairs. He could lose his ship, his license, everything he had worked for. But when he looked into Vila's eyes, he did not see an alien. He saw a scared kid who had lost everything and was reaching out for help. He thought about his own childhood, about the father who had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, about the nights when that rough, tired man had sat by his bed and told him stories until he fell asleep, about what it meant to have someone who would fight for you. Danny squeezed Vila's hands gently. All right, he said. All right, kid, I'll do it. Vila's eyes went wide. You will truly. Danny nodded slowly. I don't know if it will work. I don't know anything about law, and they're probably going to think I've lost my mind. But yeah, I'll stand up there and tell them I'm your father. Whatever happens after that, we'll figure it out together. Vila threw her arms around him. It caught him off guard, and for a moment, he did not know what to do. Then slowly, he put his arms around her small shoulders and held her while she cried. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. But sometimes, being human meant doing the thing that made no sense. Sometimes it meant walking straight into trouble because a child needed help and there was no one else. Danny Carter had spent years trying to stay invisible, trying to slip through the cracks of a galaxy that did not want him. Tomorrow, he was going to stand in front of the High Council and fight for a little girl he had met in an alley. And he was not going to lose. The tribunal chamber was the largest room Danny had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadow, and the walls were covered with carvings that told the history of the people. Thousands of years of civilization, frozen in stone. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, and his boots made small sounds that echoed in the vast space. Danny walked forward with Vila at his side. The girl had cleaned up as best she could, and he had given her his spare shirt to wear over her torn clothes. She looked tiny and scared, but she held her head up and kept walking. The council sat on a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. There were 12 of them, all dressed in robes of deep blue and silver. Their faces were calm and cold, showing nothing. In the center sat High Arbiter Solon, the oldest Danny had ever seen. His skin was nearly white with age, and his eyes were like deep pools of black water. To Solon's right sat Commander. Danny had learned about her the night before, asking questions at a small bar near the docks, was the head of child services on the station. She believed absolutely in the system. She believed that attachment made children weak, and that efficiency was the only virtue worth having. She was going to be the enemy in this room. Looked at Danny as he approached, and her face showed the first sign of emotion he had seen from any. Contempt. Pure and open contempt. "This is the human who makes a claim?" she asked. Her voice was sharp and cold. "This outsider." Danny stopped before the platform and stood straight. He had faced enemy fire in the war. He had survived a ship explosion that killed half his crew. He could handle some angry aliens in fancy robes. "My name is Danny Carter," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I am here to claim custody of the child Vila under Galactic Statute 747, Section 12, regarding cross-species adoption through proven emotional bond." The chamber was silent. Danny could feel the weight of 100 eyes on him. Officials and observers filled the gallery behind him, watching this strange scene unfold. Commander laughed. It was not a kind sound. "This is absurd," she said. "A human cannot raise a child. You are not equipped for it biologically or culturally. Our children require specific care, specific training. You understand nothing of our ways." Danny kept his eyes on her. "I understand that a child is alone and scared. I understand that she lost her parents and has no one else. Those things are the same in every species." Waved her hand dismissively. "Emotional arguments, exactly what we would expect from a human. The system exists because it works. It produces strong, capable adults who serve society. What can you offer? A cargo ship, a life of wandering. This is not care. This is chaos." She turned to the council. "I move to dismiss this claim and proceed with standard placement. The child will be taken to the immediately." Several council members nodded. Danny felt his heart sink. This was going exactly as he had feared. But then a new voice spoke. "Wait." Everyone turned to look at High Arbiter Solon. The ancient had not moved, but his eyes were now fixed on Danny with an intensity that made the human skin prickle. "Let the outsider speak," Solon said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. "He has come a long way to make this claim. The least we can do is hear him." Looked annoyed, but she did not argue. No one argued with the High Arbiter. Solon nodded at Danny. "Speak, human. Tell us why we should give a child of our people to an outsider." Danny took a deep breath. He had thought about this all night, lying awake in his small ship while Vila slept in the co-pilot chair. He had tried to think of legal arguments, clever words, anything that might convince these cold alien minds. But in the end, he had decided to just tell the truth. "I met Vila yesterday," he said. "She was hiding in an alley, starving and alone. She had been there for days because she was too scared to go to your, too scared to face a life without love, without family, without anyone who cared about her as a person instead of a resource." He paused and looked at the council members one by one. "I don't know your laws, I don't know your customs. I'm just a cargo hauler, an outsider like you say, but I know what I saw when I looked at that little girl. I saw a child who needed help, and I helped her, not because of any law or any duty, because it was the right thing to do. Snorted, the right thing, human morality, it means nothing here. Danny ignored her and kept speaking. You talk about the like it's a gift, like you're doing these children a favor by taking away everything that makes life worth living. But I've seen what cold efficiency looks like. I've seen what happens when you treat people like numbers instead of souls. It breaks them. Maybe not right away, but eventually. It always does. He pointed at Vila, who was standing beside him with tears running silently down her face. This girl is not a number, she's not a resource. She's a child who lost her parents and deserves someone who will love her. I may not understand all your ways, but I can give her that. I can give her a home. The chamber was completely silent. Danny could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Then Commander stood up, her face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous, she said. We cannot allow this precedent. If we give children to any alien who wanders in and makes emotional speeches, our entire system will collapse. The statute he cites was never meant for situations like this. It was created for allied species with formal agreements, not for random humans with cargo ships. She turned to the council. I demand an immediate vote. This claim must be rejected. Several council members began to nod again. Danny felt the moment slipping away from him. But then something unexpected happened. Vila stepped forward. She walked right up to the base of the platform and looked up at the council with her large, dark eyes. She was trembling, but her voice was clear. May I speak? Looked outraged. A child does not address the council directly. This is not proper procedure. But High Arbiter Solon raised his hand again. Let her speak, he said. There was something in his ancient eyes now, something that Danny could not quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. Vila looked up at the council, and then she looked back at Danny. This human gave me food when I was starving, she said. He sat with me in the dark and asked my name. He did not have to do these things. He had nothing to gain, but he did them anyway. She turned back to the council, and now her voice grew stronger. He is more of a father than anyone has ever been to me. And if you take me to you will be taking me from the only person in the galaxy who treats me like I matter. The words hung in the air like a challenge. And in the high seat, High Arbiter Solon slowly nodded. Interesting, he said. Very interesting indeed. Chamber waited. High Arbiter Solon studied Danny and Vila with those deep, ancient eyes. The other council members shifted in their seats, uncertain of what would happen next. Commander stood rigid with anger, but even she did not dare speak while the High Arbiter was thinking. Finally, Solon leaned forward slightly. Human, he said, you have made claims about love and care and family. These are concepts my people understand differently than yours. We see attachment as a weakness that clouds judgment. We believe that children thrive when they are freed from emotional bonds and trained to think clearly. Tell me, why should we accept your way over ours? Danny felt the weight of the question. This was not just about Vila anymore. This was about two ways of seeing the universe, two philosophies colliding in this ancient chamber. He thought about his father again, about the man who had worked himself to exhaustion every day, not because he had to, but because he loved his family. About the night his father had cried after Danny's mother died, sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. Danny had been 15 years old. He had never seen his father cry before, and in that moment he had understood something important. Strength was not about hiding your feelings. Strength was about feeling everything and still getting up the next morning. You want to know about humans, Danny said slowly. Fine, let me tell you about my people. He stepped forward and his voice grew stronger. We come from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. We almost destroyed ourselves about a dozen times. Wars, plagues, disasters we brought on ourselves through stupidity and greed. By every logical measure, we should not have survived. We should be nothing but bones and ruins. He paused and looked around the chamber. But we survived. Do you know why? Because when everything fell apart, we did not become more cold. We did not become more efficient. We held on to each other. We loved harder. We made stupid, illogical choices because we could not bear to lose the people who mattered to us. Commander made a sound of disgust. This is exactly what I mean. Your species is ruled by emotion. It is a weakness. Danny turned to face her directly. Maybe, he said, maybe you're right. Maybe love makes us weak. Maybe caring about people is inefficient. But let me ask you something, Commander. When your system fails, when you produce children who are capable but empty, who will they turn to? Who will hold them when they are scared? Who will tell them that they matter? Opened her mouth to respond, but Danny kept going. You call us outsiders because we don't fit your systems. We make decisions that don't make sense to you. We sacrifice our own comfort for strangers. We adopt children who are not our blood. We form families out of choice, not duty. He turned back to face the High Arbiter. Where I come from, a father is not defined by genetics. A father is someone who shows up, someone who protects, someone who lies awake at night worrying about a child who might not even be his own. We make these bonds because we choose to, because we believe that love is not a weakness. It is the strongest thing in the universe. The chamber was silent. Danny could feel his heart pounding, but he did not look away from Solon's eyes. You ask why you should accept my way over yours, he said. I'm not asking you to change your culture. I'm asking you to let one child have a chance at something different. One child who has already lost everything and is reaching out for help. One child who deserves to know what it feels like to be loved. He took a deep breath. That's what humans do. We love people, even when it hurts, even when it makes no sense, even when the whole galaxy thinks we're fools for doing it. We love anyway. The silence stretched on. Danny could see the council members looking at each other, uncertain. Some of them seemed unmoved, but others had strange expressions on their faces. Confusion, maybe, or something they did not want to name. Then Vila moved again. The little girl walked across the polished floor and took Danny's hand. She held it tightly, and she looked up at the council. He saved me, she said simply. When no one else would even look at me, he stopped. He gave me food and asked my name. He promised to help me, even though he knew it would be hard, even though he knew you might send him away. She squeezed Danny's hand. I don't want to go to I don't want to forget how to love. I want to stay with him. I want to be his daughter. Danny looked down at her and something broke open in his chest. He had not planned for this. He had not planned to care this much. But when she said those words, he knew that it was true. She was not just some alien kid he was trying to help. She was his daughter now. Whatever happened, she was his. High Arbiter Solon sat in silence for a long moment. His ancient face showed nothing, but his eyes were moving between Danny and Vila, studying them with an intensity that made Danny's skin prickle. Finally, he spoke. I have lived for nearly 300 years, Solon said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves and build themselves again. I have heard every argument about the proper way to raise children, the proper way to structure society, the proper way to live. He leaned forward slightly. But I have never seen anything quite like this. A human, a complete stranger, standing before the council of an elder race and demanding that we recognize his claim to one of our children, based on nothing but love. He paused and something changed in his eyes, something almost like warmth. My people have forgotten something important, Solon said softly. We have been so focused on efficiency that we have forgotten why we build societies in the first place. Not to create workers, not to produce resources, but to protect the young, to give them a future worth living. He raised his hand. The claim is accepted, provisionally. The chamber exploded into noise. Commander shot to her feet, shouting objections. Other council members were talking over each other. The gallery buzzed with shocked whispers. But Danny did not hear any of it. He was looking at Vila, who was staring up at him with tears streaming down her face. But these were not tears of sadness. These were tears of hope, of relief, of joy. He knelt down and pulled her into his arms. "I've got you," he said softly. "I've got you, kid." And somewhere deep in his chest, in the place where he had locked away all his feelings for so many years, something opened up and started to heal. He was a father now. And he was never going to let her go. 6 months had changed everything. Danny's old cargo ship looked different now. There was a second bunk in the crew quarters, smaller than his but comfortable. The walls were covered with drawings that Vila had made at various stops along their routes. Pictures of stars and planets, of the strange creatures they had seen, of the two of them standing together on different worlds. The ship was not just a vessel anymore. It was a home. Danny sat in the pilot's seat, watching the stars drift past as the ship cruised toward their next destination. The heating system was finally fixed, and the engine hummed smoothly. The extra money from the last few jobs had gone toward making the ship safer and more comfortable for a child. New life support filters, better food storage, a small corner where Vila could study and read. He heard footsteps behind him and smiled as Vila climbed into the co-pilot chair. She had grown a little in the past months, and her eyes were brighter now. The thin, scared girl from the alley was gone. In her place was someone confident and curious, eager to learn about the universe. "We're approaching 7, Danny said. "Should be there in about an hour." Vila nodded and looked at the navigation display. "Station, right, the one with the good food." "That's the one," Danny grinned. "And yes, we can get noodles, I promised, didn't I?" Vila smiled, and it still amazed him every time. Children were not supposed to smile like that. Their culture did not encourage expressions of happiness, but Vila had learned. She had learned that it was okay to show joy, to laugh, to feel things without shame. It had not been easy. The first few weeks after the hearing had been hard, and her supporters had tried to challenge the ruling, filing complaints and demanding reviews. But High Arbiter Solon had stood firm. The claim was valid. The bond was real. Vila would stay with Danny. Eventually, the challenges stopped. Commander retreated into bitter silence, and life moved on. But the story did not end there. Word had spread across the sector about what happened on Station 4. A human cargo hauler had stood before the High Council and claimed an alien child as his own. He had spoken of love and family and the things that made life worth living, and the Council had listened. At first, the reaction was mixed. Some species laughed at the idea, others were confused. A few were openly hostile, calling it an insult to traditions. But then something strange began to happen. Other stories started to surface. Stories about humans who had done similar things. A human doctor who had adopted 3 war orphans from a devastated alien world. A human teacher who had spent her entire savings to build a school for refugee children. A human soldier who had carried an injured alien child through a battlefield, protecting her with his own body. These stories had always existed, scattered across the galaxy, but now people were paying attention. They were seeing a pattern, something about humans that was different from other species, something that could not be explained by logic or efficiency. Humans loved fiercely. They formed bonds with anyone who needed them. They adopted strangers into their families and fought for them without hesitation. It made no sense by any rational measure. And that was exactly what made it powerful. 7 appeared on the screen, a spinning wheel of metal and light against the darkness. Danny eased the ship toward the docking bay, following the approach vector that the station's computer provided. Beside him, Vila watched with careful eyes, learning how to navigate by observing. They docked smoothly, and Danny powered down the main engines. He stretched his back and stood up. "Ready?" he asked. Vila hopped out of her chair. "Ready." They walked through the station together, and Danny noticed something that still surprised him. People looked at them differently now. Before, humans had been tolerated but avoided. Outsiders, strangers. But now, when aliens saw Danny walking with his daughter, their expressions changed. There was curiosity, respect, sometimes even warmth. The story had changed something. Not just for Danny and Vila, but for all humans everywhere. They found Morgan at her usual spot, a small bar overlooking the station's main promenade. She was a tall woman with red hair and a quick smile, and she had been Danny's friend for over a decade. When she saw them coming, she stood up and waved. "There they are," laughed, "the most famous cargo hauler in the sector and his kid." Danny rolled his eyes, but he was smiling. "We're not famous." "Are you kidding?" shook her head as they sat down. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about you? The man who adopted an alien kid through sheer stubbornness. The human who made the council listen." Vila giggled. "He did not tell me about that part." "Of course he didn't," grinned at her. "He's too humble, but trust me, kid. Your dad did something that mattered. People are talking about it everywhere." Danny shifted uncomfortably. He had never wanted to be famous. He had just wanted to help a scared little girl. But was serious now. "I mean it, Danny. You changed something out there. People are starting to see humans differently. Not as outsiders. Not as children who haven't grown up yet. They're seeing us as something else entirely." Danny looked at her. "What?" Smiled. "As family. As the kind of people who will stand up for anyone, no matter what species they are. The kind of people who will fight for love instead of just survival." She raised her glass. "To the outsiders," she said, "who do what no one else will." Danny raised his glass too, and so did Vila, with a cup of fruit juice that had ordered for her. After the toast, Vila excused herself to explore the station market. Danny watched her go, and his chest felt full in a way he could not quite describe. "You know," said quietly, "I never thought I'd see you like this. You always seemed so determined to be alone." Danny nodded slowly. "I was. For a long time I thought that was safer. No attachments, no pain." He looked at with something warm in his eyes. "But then I met her, and I realized that being safe isn't the same as being alive." Smiled. "That's the most human thing you've ever said." Danny laughed. "Yeah, I guess it is." Outside, Vila came running back, holding a strange alien fruit that she wanted to try. Her smile was bright and real, and she looked at Danny like he was the whole world. And somewhere across a dozen star systems, on stations and ships and distant planets, other species watched the humans and wondered at them. Wondered at the outsiders who loved so fiercely, who formed families from nothing, who refused to give up on anyone. They were beginning to understand. Humanity would never be ignored again. Not because they were strong, but because they were kind. And in a universe full of cold stars and ancient empires, that was the most powerful thing of all.